Hey everyone, Jay Ferguson here. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thanks very much for returning if you've been here before. Before I start this episode, I just wanted to say a big thanks to everybody who has either commented or followed along or liked any of the videos that I've been making over this past year. And it's very rewarding and very nice to see that I've reached a plateau of over 1,000 subscribers, and that just happened about a month or so ago. And that's great. I didn't know what to expect when starting this or who would be interested. I see other ones, other kind of record enthusiast videos out there in the wild, and seems like there's a lot of great ones. I know there's a lot of great ones, and it's just nice to see that people are following along on this one as well. So thanks very much. It's much appreciated. For this episode, I had a couple ideas for episodes, and I started doing them, and I kind of put them by the wayside and developed them. This episode was influenced a little bit by one that I saw on YouTube from the channel called Phantassie Roundabout, and the host of that channel is a fellow named Tim, and he did an episode on EPs, so extended plays, about a month or two ago, and it kind of just made me think that, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea. His angle was like the debate, like what constitutes an EP. Can it be on a 7-inch single? Is it only 12-inch? Can it be 5 songs? Can it be 4 songs? Do all the songs have to be unique to that release, or can they be on one of the songs on an album? And I think it inspired some debate in the comments and some different things. And I often think the best EP might be a 12-inch single, or like 12-inch, the size of an LP, and maybe it has 4 songs on it, and they're at 45 RPM, and they sound magnificent. So that's kind of one extra. It's kind of like a 12-inch single with maybe an extra song or 2 on it, and I do like that format because it sounds so great. But there's something about, I find, the compactness of the 7-inch single EP. So I have a lot of those in my collection. And watching that episode, it just sort of spurred me to think, oh, I'd like to do an episode highlighting some of my favorite EPs that are in my collection. Extended plays, 4 songs generally, sometimes 3, that are on a 7-inch record, usually not associated with another LP. And, for the artist, maybe it's a stopgap release in between albums. Maybe it's a unique theme. Or maybe it's the first release from an artist who has a few songs, but they're not ready for a full record. So anyhow, there's so many different umbrellas that an EP can fall under. But I do like, maybe the fidelity is not as good as the 12-inch EP, but I just love the compactness, like I said, of the 7-inch EP. So I have a bunch here from my collection that I've accumulated over the years, and I thought I would just sort of highlight some of my favorites, and maybe some of you have these as well. And if not, maybe there's some that you might be interested in checking out. So I'm going to start it off with what might be the maybe the granddaddy of 7-inch EPs. Like there have been some before this and many after this, but in the sort of pop rock sphere, this is one of my favorites, and I picked this up on a trip that our band Sloan made to England many years ago, and I have a couple actually in here that I picked up on while on tour a long time ago. But the EP that I'm speaking about is the Who, Ready Steady Who. Just let me get organized here. This was an EP that was released in between the first LP, My Generation, or the Who Sings My Generation over here, and a quick one. And it kind of celebrates their one of their many appearances on the Ready Steady Go UK television show. So, and they renamed it Ready Steady Who for that one episode, and they kind of took over the show. And anyhow, they released an EP that went along with that episode, and this one's actually 5 songs, so I'm breaking the rule already, but they're great. Disguises, if you know that song, fantastic. Circles, also known as Instant Party as well, but wonderful Pete Townsend song. And then on the B-side, there's 3 songs, and they're all covers. There's the Batman theme, a song called Bucket Tea, and then you have Barbara Ann, sung by Keith Moon. Not a Beach Boys original, but made famous by the Beach Boys. And it's just like a wonderful sort of a stopgap release between 2 records, and also tied into the TV show. And the label as well was released on the Reaction label there as well. If you can check that out. This is not in the most amazing condition, but I was so excited to find it on one of my first sort of tours with the band to England that, I couldn't resist picking it up. But I should probably pick up another maybe or seek out a copy in a little bit better condition. But what lovely graphics, and the Who, like how cool would that look on a T-shirt? Ready Steady Who, RS. The sort of the photographs worked into the initials of the program. Anyhow, I just love these British EPs, especially with the beautiful clarifoil on the front and the tabs on the back and everything like that. So anyhow, one of my favorite EPs, and really, is almost the definition of a great EP. Unique tracks that eventually found their way onto compilations and things like that. But yeah, wonderful EP to start the episode off, I'd like to think. Now, this next one is also by a British band from the 60s, and this one is called Instrumental Assassination by Manfred Mann. Manfred Mann, just about everybody probably knows Do-Wah Diddy, which would have been their big hit. And they had a number of other hits, but the guys in that band were accomplished players, and some of them come from jazz backgrounds, and their music got more and more complex as it moved into the 1970s and Manfred Mann's Earth Band. But anyhow, so this EP, which is all instrumental, they do an instrumental version of Sunny, Wild Thing by the Trogs, Get Away, and With a Girl Like You. And that's the back right there. So it's really highlighting Manfred Mann, who played piano and organ on all these, and also Klaus Voormann. Beatle fans will know of Klaus Voormann. He played in Manfred Mann for a period of time. He plays recorder on this. Anyhow, a really cool EP, and the way this ties into the Ready Steady Who EP is that if you listen to there's a great, wonderful podcast out. It's been going on for a number of years, probably my favorite to listen to. It's The History of Rock in 500 Songs. And if you don't know it, I recommend going in and checking it out. Fantastic deep dive on a number of songs throughout the history of rock music. And the current episode right now is all about Pinball Wizard by The Who. So they do a bit of a deep dive on The Who, and they do end up talking about the Ready Steady Who EP, and how originally Pete Townsend wanted to do an instrumental EP because he had heard this, and apparently Manfred Mann also have another instrumental EP, so maybe they meant that one, but I think it's this one. And it inspired him to be like, oh, I'm going to do an instrumental EP as well. That didn't pan out, and it eventually became the Ready Steady Who EP. I hope I have all that information correctly. Please correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong. But anyhow, it's a cool font, and a very striking graphic as well, and released on the Fontana label, with those cool little three-prong centers that sometimes get knocked out, but it's nice when you see them and they're intact. A lovely EP. So anyhow, I just wanted to highlight how this one tied to that one, and this would be the kind of EP, sort of highlighting the more instrumental, jazzier side, I guess you could say, of Manfred Mann in between particular albums. So anyhow, cool EP there as well. Well, all right. Okay, now we're going to jump ahead to the later 70s, and these EPs that I'm going to sort of highlight right now are more like the EP as a debut for an artist. Maybe they only have a few songs on the go and they want to get something out before they make a full-length record. So, they'll record a few songs and release them on a 3 or 4 song 7-inch EP. And this one is, if you know this band from their more popular recordings, more like in the mid-'80s, then the sounds on this EP are definitely a little more shocking and experimental. The band I'm talking about is Scritti Politti. This is from 1978. Skank Block Bologna is the name of this EP, and that's the front side. It's very handmade and folded over, as you can see, and sort of photocopied, maybe not photocopied, but printed, but it has a sort of photocopy feel. And like I said, much more challenging music than they would be known for big hit songs like Hypnotize, Would Be's. You would not think that this is the band that would end up recording with the famed producer Arif Mardin, who recorded, Aretha Franklin and the Bee Gees, and they ended up working with Miles Davis as well. You would not think that they would have sprung from this when you hear this, but it's still very musical, and the wonderful vocal stylings of the golden voiced Green Gartside, super duper singer. And anyhow, this EP, I'm just going to fold it out because it's so unusual to look at. Very handmade, and the sort of the sleeve or the pocket that holds the record is just kind of, as you can see, stapled in, and the labels have just been hand stamped on St. Pancras Records, and it was also distributed by Rough Trade back then. But the cool thing about this sleeve, in a very democratic fashion, it tells you all of the places where you could record your, if you're in a young band and you want to record your own record and press your own record, they give you, like, here's where you could do the pressing. They, for example, say Pi Records on Western Road, Mitcham in Surrey. We made 2,500 copies at 13 pence each, and processing, and it cost us £369 and 36 pence. The labels, the rubber stamp, cost £8. The recording at Spaceword Studios in Cambridge cost us £98. Gives you the address and the number you can call. Anyhow, it's a great, it's emblematic of the do-it-yourself attitude. And can you imagine buying this record and getting all that information? I would have been so excited. I had no idea when I was young, and wouldn't it be cool to make a record? How do you do that? Where do you find out? And an artist that you like, lays it all out for you. So it's just wonderful, and like I said, kind of wild music, and but whatever, a landmark early kind of Rough Trade era UK 7-inch EP, and a big fan of that. So anyhow, let's listen to a couple seconds from this as well.
Listen, when there's no one left to go. Song goes with a question, but there's nothing left to do. Rose in that 6 and she hasn't a view. Rose in the broad and there isn't a notion. I lost to listen and there's no one left to go. Someone's got a question, but there's nothing left to do.
All right, love it. The wonderful Green Gartside and Scritti Politti. The next EP that I wanted to show is also a debut EP by a band that went on to make some fantastic records and also some hit records. This is their debut EP called Packet of Three. The band is called Squeeze. And it's the front and there's the back. Very, has definitely more, a new wave punk kind of feel. And let's see the label on Deptford Fun City Records. Their only record. I don't know if this is exactly their own label. Sure, I should have researched that exactly. But anyhow, this one was produced, as was their debut LP on A&M Records, produced by John Cale, who I don't really think, I think he was trying to, what are your, craziest or most punkish kind of songs? And he was encouraging them in that direction, as opposed to what are your most well-written songs? And that's why I think the first Squeeze album, there's some good songs on it, but it's definitely no comparison to the albums that followed. And I would say the same as the EP. It's still exciting. Cat on a Wall is great, and Backtrack is awesome song. But the voice of Glenn Tilbrook, who's one of my favorite singers of all time, still shines through, and it's still a cool EP and a really neat part of their discography. And I was happy to find this. I don't remember where I got this. It was also reissued with a different cover, but I believe this is the first pressing from 1977. And anyhow, a cool EP, and like I said, it was their debut release. And while I think they had other songs that might have fit on this even better, I think it's still a cool snapshot of what the band sounded like at the time. So Packet of Three by Squeeze.
Back to the way
The next EP, that's sort of like a debut EP. This one is from 1978, and I found this on one of the early trips our band made over to Great Britain. There was I don't even know if they still exist. It's been so long since I've been to England. I'm not sure if they still exist anymore, but it was a shop. I feel like it had like a red sign. It was called the Record and Tape Exchange. And there was a number of locations within London and maybe in other towns and cities in England as well. And I remember going in there, they always had all of their records, they had like a little sticker on it, the price sticker, that had like a grid. So if a record came in and it was £10, there would be, in one of the squares, it would say £10. If the record was still there a week later, or maybe it was a month, I don't know if it was a week or a month, but maybe it was a month later, it got marked down to £9. So you'd see a slash through the 10, and then it would say 9 next to it. And if it remained there for another, whatever it was, week or month, then it would get slashed down to £8. So it kept going down. So you could find some good bargains there. And I think it was also probably a really great idea to encourage, turnover of records so things didn't stick around too long. And the one that I went into in London, I remember there was like a main floor that was all LPs. And then you went upstairs, and I think there might have been a few more LPs, but it was predominantly 7-inch singles and 12-inch singles. And I remember going up there, and there was tons of amazing stuff. That's where I found the Ready Steady Who EP, and that's where I found this fantastic EP. And I'm very fortunate that I found it there, because it's much more difficult to find nowadays, and it's a much more expensive record. And I'm talking about the wonderful EP by the Undertones called Teenage Kicks, their debut EP release. That's the front. And there's a cool photo. The Undertones are shite. Anyhow, and very photocopy. Once again, it's printed, but has very rough homemade feel to it, which is wonderful. You can see it had the tracks True Confessions, Emergency Cases, Teenage Kicks, and Smarter Than You. Can you imagine having an EP with all those songs on it as your debut? Like, amazing, fantastic. Some credits on the side, and just folds out to a wonderful snapshot of the Undertones in 1978 with a very happy-looking Feargal Sharkey. And also it's got, it was released on the Good Vibrations label, which is a seminal, punk and new wave pop label, independent label in Ireland. And they've got a little ad for their previous releases. They're in Belfast. They have Big Time by Rudy. There was also Strange Thing and Just Another Teenage Rebel. That one's by the Outcasts. So that's their little advertisement as well. Anyhow, it's just got such a great homemade feel, and I think a lot of their other sleeves were sort of similar with the fold out. Anyhow, and the it's a very simple looking label there. I mean, catch the glare, but yeah, Teenage Kicks, Smarter Than You, and like I said, Emergency Cases and True Confessions. Wonderful rocking EP, and of course, like, it's gone down in fame as as John Peel, the revered BBC DJ, as his favorite song of all time. I believe they played it at his funeral, and when he played this on his radio show for the first time, he immediately stopped and then played it again. So it's wonderful, awesome. I say wonderful a lot, don't I? But I mean it. Such a rocking single, and it's such an exciting recording that has been duplicated, not many times. And anyhow, it's a great sounding EP. And like I said, it's very hard to find, and it's expensive these days. So I'm very fortunate that I was able to find it for a fraction of the cost back in the early 90s at the London Record and Tape Exchange. If anybody has ever been to that shop or knows if it still exists, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be very curious to know if it's still going, and if they still sort of do that kind of little price tag / business. So I have some other EPs. I'm going to go back in time to the 60s and also the early 70s. Some EPs maybe indicate that a band is maybe on its last legs, or it's the band is not working as well together as maybe they once did. And this is an EP, and I feel like this EP was shown on another channel, and I don't remember who it was. Maybe Crazy Jimmy showed this, but I kind of forget right now. Or maybe it was Vinyl Stockholm. I got to do my proper research. But anyhow, I've had a copy. This EP I also found at the Record and Tape Exchange on that same trip. So it was a really good day at the record store. And this is an EP by two of the Walker brothers. Solo, John Walker on one side with two tracks, Sunny and Come Rain or Come Shine. And the B-side, which is even better, solo Scott. So Scott Walker, The Gentle Rain, and Mrs. Murphy with accompaniment. That would be orchestration by Reg Guest. And I love this EP for the Scott Walker side. The John Walker side is fine, and it's also, again, on the nice Philips label there, mono, of course. And when the Walker brothers broke up, John Walker went on to make his own solo record or two. And of course, Scott Walker went on to make the most famous records, his 1, 2, 3, 4, and also Till the Band Comes In, and further records later, which have good songs, but those first 5 are notably wonderful records. This is from 1966, and Scott Walker actually wrote the song Mrs. Murphy, and it really it's a great song, and it really almost highlights how much further ahead he was than the rest of the guys in the band. Oh, the third Walker brother, Gary Walker, also went on to make a record, Gary Walker and the Rain, which is a great pop record as well. But Scott Walker's songwriting, Mrs. Murphy, I feel like it almost sounds like something that could have been on Scott 3, which is, of course, it's one of his best records. Scott 3 or Scott 4 probably tied for first place. And it's fantastic and just a great little compact EP. But, you could almost, something was in the air that this band was probably on its last legs by doing an EP where they each did their own thing. I mean, hey, like Kiss made 4 solo records. And that was it wasn't the end of Kiss, but it was the end of an era for Kiss. Like Peter Criss was gone in a year or two. And so anyhow, it does kind of indicate a little bit of a splintering. But if you see this out there, and it's not a very expensive EP, I've seen it since, and it was probably $10 or something like that. Buy it primarily for Mrs. Murphy. Wonderful song by Scott Walker. The next EP I wanted to highlight is... this one is by another one of my favorite 60s bands who were also one of my favorite 70s bands and continued on to the 80s, but really the 60s and 70s were their most wonderful records. And the band I'm talking about is the Bee Gees. So around the time of 1969, which would have been the era of Odessa, which was their fourth British album. They were on the verge of splintering as well. Robin Gibb, who was only 19, had quit the band, went off to do a solo career. Barry and Morris Gibb made another Bee Gees record called Cucumber Castle as a duo, and they ended up even playing some shows as a duo, and even with their sister, I think, as well. And then Morris ended up working on a solo record, and then Barry ended up working on a solo album. Both which never ended up getting released. But in around that time of 1970, 71, before they all got back together to make the record 2 years on, Barry Gibb had his very own fan club. And this is one of my favorite EPs. It's the Barry Gibb Fan Club EP from 1970 with 3 songs. There was no picture sleeve or anything, but it did, I think if you remember the fan club, it came with maybe like a photo and a letter and Barry Gibb's probably stamped signature or something like that. But I just have the record unto itself, and it's got a song called King Kathy on the A side, and the B side had Summer Ends and I Can Bring Love. And they're all basically Barry on an acoustic guitar. So they're kind of like Barry Gibb demos from 1970, probably of songs that he was eventually working on that might have ended up on his debut solo LP. He ended up releasing a solo single and then another solo single, actually, that only came out in Canada actually briefly. It wasn't even supposed to come out. It got pressed up and was recalled, but some leaked out, but that's another story. But this was the record that was sent out to the Barry Gibb fan club. And it's wonderful if you just enjoy hearing Barry Gibb play his own songs on acoustic guitar, and especially the song King Cathy. Fantastic song. I'm a big fan of this. I got this off of Discogs years ago, and I think you can still find copies of it out there, but I'd love to find the rest of the package that went with it. But anyhow, yeah, one of my favorites, King Cathy. Let's just hear a little bit of Barry right now.
If you pierce the dark, you'll see a light, maybe a whispered word. You're gonna make it, King Cathy. Better take it easy, girl. You live to write another day. You're gonna show the whole world.
Wonderful track, don't you think? I'm a big fan. I also want to mention that the song I Can Bring Love, which is a demo on it here, eventually ended up on a Bee Gees record, I think on To Whom It May Concern, which was one of their early 70s records. Another wonderful record by them as well. Anyhow, one of my favorites. I love that. So another EP, I don't know if this one, these next two are kind of more EPs with really sort of elaborate packaging or unusual design. And this is an EP. It's a 4-song EP from 1993 by the songwriters Eric Matthews and Richard Davies. And the band is called Cardinal. And this was the debut release on Fly Daddy Records. That's the front design right there. Toy Bell is the name of it. And that's the design on the back right there. And it kind of opens up. I'm just going to take these things out first, but it's just got a, instead of opening from the side or the top or whatever, it kind of has a gatefold in the middle with like a little essay and some kids playing there. I don't know if that's Eric or Richard Davies as children or whatever, but just kind of a cool design. And Cardinal, of course, went on to make, Richard Davies originally was making records under or within a band called the Moles from Australia. Those records are fantastic as well, lots of singles and EPs. And this is the Cardinal. They made one full-length record on Fly Daddy. They got back together and made a record years later. This is from 1993, but they got back together later, much later in the 2000s to make another album. But this would have predated the first LP by a year or two. And anyhow, eccentric, pop songwriting. They probably would have been fans of 60s Bee Gees and the like, and the Beatles and probably Syd Barrett and things like that. But I really like both of their styles, and this is a really cool EP. So maybe let's just see if we can listen to a little bit of this too.
Try. And now something so sad has hold of us, and the breath leaves, and we can't even cry.
Yeah, very cool. Also within the EP, there was just like a simple little insert, just sort of says this is the first Fly Daddy release, just with a list of thanks and the address, and the label just looks like this: Cardinal and Fly Daddy. Nothing too exciting, but a wonderful. This could have also fit into that debut EP category as well. And of course, both of them went on to make. Eric Matthews went on to make solo records on Sub Pop, and Richard Davies went on to make more records on Fly Daddy and other labels. But I kind of prefer Richard Davies. Wonderful, interesting songwriter, great melodies and interesting ideas, and definitely more. If you like sort of eccentric British songwriting, even though he's Australian, but that style, I think you might enjoy his solo records as well as the Cardinal EP as well. Okay, continuing on with the elaborate packaging of 7-inch EPs. This is probably the most elaborate one that I have, and it's from 1971. And this is a band that featured a gentleman by the name of John Mendelsohn, and some people might know the name John Mendelsohn from his writing. He was a journalist, most notably as the guy who was kind of like hyping the Kinks in the late 60s, when a lot of people had sort of forgotten about them and they were, not getting the recognition that they surely deserved. And he wrote record reviews about them and articles about them and interviewed them, and even released a book about the Kinks called The Kink Chronicles, I believe. I could be wrong. I need that in front of me and I forgot to bring it out. But anyhow, it's a cool book. He almost had that same kind of relationship with Ray Davies that maybe like Lester Bangs had with Lou Reed, that kind of push and pull, love-hate style relationship. But he was more love than hate, let's say. But he definitely championed the Kinks at a time when not many people were championing them. And this record is not a Kinks record. It's John Mendelsohn's band that he had. And this is from 1971 on United Artists Records. The band is called Christopher Milk, and it's their debut EP. It's technically 4 songs, but there's 5 songs on it. One of them is repeated. I don't know if the music is great, and the songs are very unusual in that kind of Sparks, maybe even early Queen, or even like a bit of the more unusual songs of Elton John and Bernie Taupin. If you like anything in that sphere, I almost guarantee that you'll enjoy this EP by Christopher Milk. Anyhow, so the EP, there's a cover, a cool graphic of their logo. There's a photo of the band, sort of a fisheye lens almost, and the photo extends around to this side. Anyhow, it opens up and you get the record inside like this with the songs Hey Heavyweight, which is in stereo, and it also appears on the other side in mono. It's a great track. Also, there's a broken heart for every rock and roll star on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. Basket Case, and to you, he's just a cop, but to me, he's Mr. Right. And then also Hey Heavyweight in mono. A cool 33 1/3 EP, this time on United Artists. So you get the record. And then when you open it up, you get all this cool stuff. Christopher Milk mini poster. Looks like there's like pinholes in the wall, so it might have been hanging on someone's wall at some point. So you get a poster that kind of looks like the sleeve folded out. Then there's another little insert with a full essay about the band here as well. Great. And then you have an insert, like an inner sleeve, where the record goes in with like sort of stats, like birthday, where were you raised, your favorite composers, blah, blah, blah. There's John Mendelsohn right there. Of all the different members in the band, just sort of like their stats, and the record kind of goes in there like an inner sleeve. And then the record has the gatefold itself with another cool photo, and then all of the lyrics inside. Like, this would be so expensive to make. It probably was expensive back then, but today it would end up being $35 in the store or more with all of these cool things. But it's such a great, wonderful design and sort of an exciting way to release something. Maybe they're trying too hard with putting all this stuff in there, but the music is fantastic, and it backs it up. So it makes this really worthwhile. Another little sidebar: I found this at Academy Records in New York City, in the Manhattan location. And I remember, I think what happened, I came across, they had just some 7-inch singles that were being put out or in a new release bin, and they just had this, just like that. And I knew of Christopher Milk because a friend of mine tipped me off to this EP not long before that, so I was kind of on the lookout for it. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's cool. And I asked somebody at the counter, like, do you have the sleeve for this or anything? Or is this just like that? And they're like, I think it might be, we're just putting some new stuff out, and I think it's out in a box in the back room somewhere. We haven't gone through and figured it out yet. And I was like, well, do you know which box it might be in? Like, could I have a look through it or just go back? So I really wanted to put the sleeve to this and get this. And they're like, no, you can't do that. Like, no, I'm sorry, but maybe I'll try and look for it. And I was like, okay. Anyhow, so I held on to this and sort of hemmed and hawed and looked throughout the rest of the store. And then finally, about 20 minutes later, they came out and they brought this out with all the stuff in it, and I was able to put it together. So thank you very much to that clerk at Academy Records who made my dream come true of having a complete Christopher Milk 7-inch EP. Anyhow, like I said, probably the most elaborate EP I have, but the music's fantastic and backs up the reason for having such a cool, elaborate packaging. Great artifact for that band. The last EP that I want to show, I could have, this could have probably fit back in the EP as a debut. But this is a band that had some cassettes out and full-length cassettes, and it's a band from our neck of the woods out on the east coast of Canada. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and this band is from Moncton, New Brunswick, and I was so excited when this was released in 1992. I'm talking about the band, I'll hold up the sleeve first, Eric's Trip. And this is, I guess, known as the Belong EP. It's got 4 songs: Belong, Mirror, Red-Haired Girl, and All I Want to Do. And like I said, they had some cassettes out before, but this was their first vinyl release that they kind of made themselves, although it's on the record label out of Moncton called Nim Records, or Disc Nim. And it was a limited edition of 500. This one is number 270. And the very, once again, homemade, photocopied feel. And the label, it's funny that there's a little bit of space where they wrote Eric's Trip in like a white marker. And I wonder why they left that blank. I don't know if they did that to do this, or were they thinking of changing their name at some point. Eric's Trip, as many of you would know, was a track on Daydream Nation by Sonic Youth. And that's where they got their name. And when our band was starting out in Halifax in, like I said, like 1991 and 1992, when we saw, I feel like we had kinship with other friends and in bands in Halifax. But when we saw Eric's Trip from Moncton, we felt an immediate musical kinship with this band. Their influences were probably very similar to ours at the time, which would have been, definitely My Bloody Valentine and, Sonic Youth, and to a degree, maybe not everybody in our band was into like Dinosaur Jr. or Sebadoh, but that was the core of their interest, but also, the Beatles as well and things like that. So they had a great melodic sense, but super noisy record. This 2 of the songs were recorded in 1992 at Sound Market Recordings in Halifax, and that was a studio where our band Sloan, we made our debut record. There it was basically a guy named Terry Pulliam, his house. It was the living room and his bedroom. And so they went and did some recordings there, and I think they turned out well. The other 2 songs, 2 songs are recorded there, and 2 songs are recorded on 4-track, which I think the songs that Terry recorded sound great, but I also find that Eric's Trip's natural element is their own 4 and 8-track recordings that they did on their own. I think it has their most characteristic sound, I suppose you could say. So this EP, you're getting a little bit of them in a more normal studio, if you consider someone's living room a studio, and a taste of their more 4-track homegrown kind of recordings. But boy, when this came out, was it exciting! Very exciting record. I like to think in Canada and on an independent scene, but to us in Halifax when this came out, it was wonderful. And then this also, this was before they would have signed to Sub Pop. They released another EP on our Murder Records label, and then eventually signed to Sub Pop. But this is just one of the most iconic releases, and fantastic recordings, and really happy I was able to see and play shows and hang out with Eric's Trip in those early days. So if you ever see this around, pick it up, because it's just, like I said, the way a lot of these EPs are, they might have been a wonderful snapshot in time, and I really think that this is, it takes me back to like 1992 and the great feeling of the scene out there, and one of the best records to have come out in Canada for sure, but out of that era, undoubtedly. Anyhow, the Belong EP by Eric's Trip. So that's kind of the last EP. I could probably keep going on. I had a stack about this big, and I kind of whittled it down to those. So I have some more. If anybody finds this kind of topic of interest, please let me know. I know I said last time I was thinking like, oh, I should do like one of some Australian records that I have, but I haven't really got around to organizing a good one of that, because some of it is so, weighed so heavy on one band that it seems kind of funny. But so I'm still thinking of that, and I was thinking of like some other local East Coast records as well. But I could do another EP episode, and so if this one interested you at all, please leave me a comment below. And if any of these EPs are in your collection, or strike a note with you, please, like I said, leave a comment below. It's always nice to hear from record enthusiasts out there. And also, hopefully, if this is the first time seeing this, my table's a little wobbly, can you tell? If this is the first time watching, please consider subscribing or a like or whatever. It always helps sort of put the video out there in front of more people. And once again, thanks to all the people who've subscribed over the past year and put me up over 1,000. Very cool, and it's just nice that people are interested in this topic, and these are always fun to do. So please stay safe and stay well wherever you are. Hope you are keeping well, and we will catch you on the next episode. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks.